Maimer Tess in Kuntreis Umayan, and we were discussing until now a lot about the Hamshacha and how it comes down, and you have the whole wheel of fortune that it gets as hashva from Chachma of Atzilus, and the wheel of fortune is Malchus of Atzilus, and it goes either to the right or to the left, and we're saying a lot of fancy terms, and we're gonna try to. I think I got everything. Oh, and we also said that Rishonim get from above this concept, so it doesn't need it doesn't come based on the measurement of Torah, because the Chachma of Atzilus is related to Torah. We're saying a lot of good things. We're going to try to bring it down a little bit more now. So v'hine shereshin, because the root of the concept is v'hine yidua. It's known seder hishalshalos hu b'chinas ir primi. That seder hishalshalos is the level of ir primi. It's the level of internal light. It's that you have light and it flows through channels and it goes to different places. That is to say, like light gets enclosed in vessels. And the first of the vessels is the level of Chachma. So just to give some kind of an example of what he's saying, an example of light and vessels. If you have different colored glasses, as in different colored drinking glasses or something like that, when light shines through them, what happens is they filter the light, and by the time that they're done with the light only expresses itself in one sense. If you have a green glass, then when you shine the light into the glass, only green light is going to be visible afterwards. That's what makes the glass green, is that it emits green light. It transforms it filters out from the light until you're only left with green. And it's like that with any color. So that's very often why we use the example of iris and kalim, because it doesn't change the essence of the light. The light is still light. But it changes the way, the perception of the light, and it changes in not an essential way, because it's still light, even though it might be less, it might be more filtered, whatever it is, but ultimately it's still light that's coming through, but it brings out more noticeable qualities in the light. That's just a classic example. That's why we always say iris and kalim. It's a very, very classic example, and it applies to so many things. You have like electricity, which is of raw power, and if you pump that into a refrigerator, then you're taking the kayach of electricity and you're expressing it in the way that it can make things technically colder, or it doesn't really make things colder, but it causes energy displacement, so that, to the point that you have more cold in one place and more hot in another place. That's beside the point. But that's something that electricity can do. That's something electricity can cause. And whenever you have this notion of something which is much loftier than what it is, it comes and it gets enclosed in something else. This is the concept related to iris and kalim. So this is just so that whenever we say iris and kalim, that should be kind of clear, hopefully. Although I feel like I'll need to repeat it if other people come. But that's in general the concept of the kitzur. So, by way of example, we have another example. With a person down here. The power of Chachma is the first power which is enclosed in the vessel, which is the limbs of a person. When a person thinks, the person expresses himself in his thought. And when a person expresses himself in his thought, that's the first level of a person expressing themselves in the body. The brain is doing the work, it's doing the calculations, and then the brain will send out a signal somewhere in the body, and it's sending out an electrical signal, and ultimately it ends up refining itself until you have an actual motion of the hand or something to that effect. But there's something else which is different than the seichel, because it's different than the chachma, I should say. The ratzon shelamayla chachma in the kli miyuchedes be'evrei aguf. The will which is above the body doesn't have a vessel which is unique to it in the body. Because it is found in the entire body the same way throughout. Even though it's felt more in the mind. That is to say that the brain feels the will, and feels what the will is much more than the leg. The leg can't comprehend what will is. The brain has a much more intimate connection with the will. In general, the brain has a more intimate connection with everything. Even mitzvahs, which have technically a higher level of gilui of get v'chait and whatnot, there's more godliness that's ultimately to be revealed in mitzvahs, but there's no connection that a yid can have with Hashem that's deeper than the connection that a yid can have with Hashem with Torah. Why? Because with Torah, you're taka using your mind to grasp Hashem's Torah, and Hashem's Torah is very connected to Hashem himself. And when a Yid thinks Torah, this is Parakeh of Tanya, when a Yid thinks Torah, he's using his mind to grasp the Eibusher Kaviyachol, which is a very deep level of connection. Even though mitzvahs makes it dir b'tachleinu, etc., there's a lot more in mitzvahs, but Torah has that very unique aspect. So in general, the mind is much better at grasping things. It's much better at having an intimate connection with things. But this is it's that we said the line already, that the seichel in the mind feels the ratzain feels the will with a much deeper feeling than the leg. But the will itself is found in the leg, the same way that it's found in the head. The proof for this is when it arises in a person's will that he wants to move his leg. He doesn't need to think about it. There's no intellectual process. Maybe there's an electrical signal or something like that which comes from the brain, because sometimes if the reason why you're moving your leg is because of something that you've seen outside, then what needs to happen is that the signal needs to go from the eye to be transferred to the brain, because the leg doesn't see anything. The brain also doesn't see anything, but the eye sees something. So the eye needs to send it to the brain, and the brain needs to send it to the leg. So ultimately, it might end up going like that. But if a person has a tnuah that they want to move their leg, not because of external stimuli, just like a natural thing, they move their leg instantaneously. This is what the leg does. This is what every body part does. The body just follows the will. A person doesn't need to be conscious even necessarily or aware in order to move their body. It doesn't take something that takes an intellectual process. So, yeah. If you want to say that the will, that its dwelling place is in the mind, in the head. The same way that intellect, its dwelling place is in the head. Then you need to have some kind of delay between when the will arises in the mind to when it's expressed in the leg. Such as when a person has an intellectual process that arouses from his mind to the leg. This is something that happens. Sometimes you think something and the thing that you're thinking makes you walk better, or makes you walk in a different way. Like a person that's being careful in how he walks. I don't know if you guys have in Australia, in America, when a person gets pulled over, sometimes what they'll do is they'll tell him to walk in a straight line to make sure he's not drunk. I don't know, do they do this? Is it funny?
It seems so old school. We have the machine that tells you.
Yeah, no, we also have a machine. I personally have never been pulled over for drunk driving. So the closest I ever got was, I think a cop just wanted to pass me on the highway because instead of flashing the lights and sirens, I pulled over a little bit and the guy just zipped by me. But yeah, anyhow, so I'm just repeating from what I've heard. I've never whatever. But when you want to walk in a particular kind of way, as in a thought out way, then yeah, it takes more time than just walking. But we have our legs just know what to do with walking. Now, usually humans don't do things without thinking about it, especially when we're conscious. We do things all the time when we're not thinking about it, we're not conscious, and that's not something from the brain. That's just the body doing things. Usually, we do things because we want to, and there's a thought behind it. But even the things that we do because we want to, and there's a thought behind it, we often just express ourselves without a thought. We just walk without thinking about it, and we could walk on autopilot. It's like a thing that we do. And the will has expressed itself in the legs, and it expresses itself in the hands, and there's so many different things that the will just expresses itself, and it's not in the mind. This was like one of the things I spent a lot of time thinking about in lecture Aleph of Zal, because it didn't seem to fit with the physical processes that you have in the brain and the signal. But no, it all works out and it all checks out. There are certain things that you do because you receive the signal from your brain, because it responds to external stimuli. But if you want to do something simply just to do it, and there's no cheshbon of something that happens in the outside world, I just want my leg to move regardless of what else is there, the leg does it. If you want to say haraya, I don't think he brings this. I don't know if I've necessarily seen it, although I feel like I have somewhere. Anyhow, there are certain mental blocks that we have on certain body parts or whatever it is that we're not we can't bite through our finger. That's when we could bite through our finger. It's very easy. Our finger has about as much strength as a carrot, I remember reading somewhere. So it's very easy to bite through the finger. But the brain has a block on it that says, no, you can't bite through the finger, because that's typically, not a good thing. But if a person is distracted well enough that the brain isn't putting that block on it, we can do it. We can do things. We can, like, if we want to bite down, it's a will that we have, and the jaw will clamp and whatever it is. And if the finger happens to be in the way, this usually happens when people are sleeping or whatever it is. I have a sister, and she was once sleeping, and her mouth was like moving. I don't know. She was having a dream about chewing something. I don't know exactly what it was, and her hand ended up in her mouth, and she needed to go to the hospital, if I remember correctly, because she was bleeding and whatever it was. But her brain wasn't tapping. Her brain didn't see it. And it took too long before, her, ouch, the hand is bleeding. We can do things without the brain. The will expresses itself without the brain necessarily being involved.
But
that's the point.
Talking before about walking, for example, isn't a Jew meant to walk in a certain fashion? So his mind should be working, he should be thinking about the way in which he should be walking, as opposed to just doing it in autopilot.
You say that one more time?
A Jew's meant to walk in a certain fashion.
Yeah.
Isn't that? I would think that's kind of a mechanism that Hashem created so that we do think about how we walk and we do think about how we act, as opposed to just being on autopilot. Because when you're on autopilot, you can do things inappropriate or wrong or whatever.
So in general, it's very good to do everything with kavanah, etc. There is a line that the Rebbe Rashab says that when he was until a certain age, if I remember correctly, I don't remember the age, but if I remember correctly, until a certain age, that he trained himself that his body should naturally do everything it says in Shulchan Aruch.
Up until an age.
As in, it took him till a certain age that he trained himself that his body should act in accordance to Shulchan Aruch. And I will say that I think that as much as it is geschmack to be able to walk down the street and to say I'm walking like a Yid does, and maybe it's a good thing to focus on sometimes, but it's also the kind of thing that would drive a regular person insane very, very frequently, because you can only do so much concentration in your day, and if you're concentrating on everything, and when you're walking in the street, you're also thinking, and it's actually a good thing. It's a good thing that when you're walking, that should be the default. But to consciously be aware of every single step that you're taking is very mentally tiring. And I think that most people would be better devoting their energy to learning when they're not walking on the street. And so therefore I think that it's important that at least for some time to train yourself to walk in a certain way. And yes, I think that even though it's not the easiest thing to do, but to train yourself to walk in the way the Shulchan Aruch says, with your head slightly down and not taking two steps that are too broad. But ultimately it should be a training, and when the training is done, it shouldn't be something that you're necessarily thinking about constantly, and rather you should be thinking about terror when you're walking down the street. So yeah, that's a good point. Anyhow, so we're saying that we're talking. So a person that walks straight, or like people that are dancing according to the music, as in there's music and they need to dance to match the music. So it takes that they need to process the music in their mind, and then they need to dance accordingly. And there's supposedly these big competitions where people dance, whatever, to music they don't even know, and whatever. But the point is that you need it takes a thought process. So it takes a certain amount of time, and it takes a certain amount of skill, and it doesn't come naturally. This is because it comes in a way of enclothement, that the song enters the person and it starts filtering through their brain. Their brain needs to start coming to decisions, and then it gets sent down to different signals, and it comes through a way of enclothement that the song needs to be enclosed in the body to some extent, or the air of the song, if you will, the light from the song gets into the body, and then the person will dance and they'll make it fit to the tune. So that is to say, the song gets enclosed in the person's mind. The song gets enrobed in the person's mind, and the mind is thinking about it. And it gets enclosed in the mind because that's where the mind is. That's where the intellect is. And it goes from the intellect, it goes until the person feels it, until ultimately they're actually dancing. Hold on. And this is all in a way of enclothement, that the light of the seichel gets enclosed in everything, including in the power of the leg moving. And therefore for this, you need effort and work, and it takes time. And if the will would also be enclosed in some kind of vessel, then the will would also need to be enclosed to some extent in the vessel until the point that it would also take time and effort. But we see that the moving the leg, it doesn't take any kind of time, any kind of effort, as long as you're not, dancing, as long as you're not trying to do it in a certain kind of way that relies on external stimuli or whatever it is. Because the will does not have any set vessel in the body. And it's found in the leg the same way that it's found in the head. And the first thing which is enclosed in the mind is the ability, is the power of wisdom that it encloses itself in the mind. And there are three intellectual vessels: Chachma, Bina, and Das. Va'midas. Oh, we're doing fantastic time. No, we're not. It's okay. We have 5 minutes after this. Va'midas, Mishkan, Believe, and the emotional properties are primarily based in the heart. And so too, all other abilities have different body parts. So we say that will expresses itself in everything in the body. Chachma and Bina and Das, they mainly affect in the brain, and emotions mainly affect in the heart. And so too, every different body part, digestion, the power of digestion that we have expresses itself in, the kidney and the livers and etc. And everything has, and the ability to walk mainly expresses itself in the legs, and the ability to handle things with fine motor skills expresses itself in the hands, etc., etc. Everything has an individual body part that the air shines into. And we're going to explain as Hashem soon how everything expresses itself and what the different interactions are. But anyhow, any questions? No. Okay. I guess we'll end early. I thought.
You have to tell me the story of Rob from yesterday.
I'll tell you off the recording. So the internal powers are enclosed in individual vessels, and they come by way of a shalshalos. They come by way of cause and effect, kind of. And the first power of these is the power of chachma. The power of ratzin is a power that is makif. It surrounds, because it's not something that needs to go through different layers. It's just something that's all around found. Because it's found in all body parts, and it doesn't need to come in a shalshalos. It doesn't need to go from level to level. Therefore, the power of intellect comes with work, and as in the intellect needs to do some kind of work in order to express itself, and it takes also a certain amount of time. However, the effect of will comes without needing to put in work and without needing to wait time. All right.
Will can be affected by external factors.
Will can be. There are some wills that aren't affected by external factors. So will is, everything, and intellect is also affected by external factors. Everything is affected by external factors, but in general, we have some core wills that we express, and yeah.